Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 27 in Be With Me. I'm going to title today, Sticking Yourself with a Needle. And the reason I'm going to talk about this today is because the Bible talks about sticking yourself with a needle, sort of. This is from 1 Timothy chapter 6, and we're going to read 9 and 10 again. And I'm going to read the scripture, then I'm going to tell you a story about surgery and about self-harm, and then we'll make some conclusions. So here it is, verse two verses. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. So I'm going to vamp on the piercing themselves. And I'm going to tell you a story about surgery today. Now, I was a surgeon in my career, and surgery is a dangerous thing, particularly for patients. But what nobody thinks about, that's outside of the world of surgery, it's a dangerous thing for the staff. So in a typical operation, at least 3, if not 6 people will, quote unquote, get their hands bloody helping the patients. Now, because hospitals are places for sick people, in other words, that they come in not in the best of shape, patients frequently bring into the hospital diseases that place everybody who's there at risk. So recently we had that with COVID. But the ones I want to talk about today are blood-borne diseases that you can't really see until you cut a person open. Now, surgical risks include very sharp objects. So the scalpel and pins and screws and awls and needles are all stuff that is used in surgery. And quite honestly, they pride themselves there of having the sharpest things that are on the planet. So though blood splatter sometimes is a risk, what I want to talk about today is blood inoculation. That is injecting blood. So infectious diseases can be transmissible from the patient to the staff. So most notably in my career, it was AIDS and hepatitis C. And for a great period of my career, these were 100% fatal. So a fatal disease could be given from the patient to the surgeon or nurse or circulating nurse. So the only reason I want to talk about today is it's in the Bible. Because in verse 10 it says they pierced themselves. And I think it's a good illustration. So no surgeon, no nurse ever says the day that they go into surgery, hey, I'm going to stick myself today. I'm going to pierce myself with many a pangs. I'm going to impale myself and entangle myself with the sharpest of objects. I'm going to penetrate entirely myself with a potentially fatal fluid by making a hole in my body where there shouldn't be a hole. In fact, there's all these protocols and everything is done to prevent this, obviously. So the protocols have special words that are used and checklists and particular safety objects and safety measures, and most specifically patterns of behavior that are done in the OR so that this doesn't happen. But, it's an imperfect place and there's less experienced people and sometimes people are tired and all these things. So most surgeons lived in fear, number one, of harming the patient, but also by needle sticks and in harming one's coworkers. So you can hurt your coworkers and colleagues even fatally by doing this part wrong. So because needle sticks is a potentially life-threatening for the person that gets stuck, virtually every medical personnel that they'll never forget being stuck with a needle. And how many times, in fact, just go for fun to ask your favorite nurse how many times you've been stuck by a needle. I guarantee you they'll be able to tell you some stories. So here's the secret, which I wanted to get to today, is that though other people may place you at risk in the operating room, by far the greatest risk that you face in the operating room is from yourself. The vast majority of needle sticks are from yourself. They are self-inflicted harm. You stick yourself, you pierce yourself, just like it says in Scripture today, with something that is potentially fatal to you, just like it says in the Scripture. And I couldn't resist the illustration. So, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many a pang. So this desire to be rich, it's the love of money, it's the craving, it's the aspiration for it. It means to stretch out your hand for it. And then so let's say you get it. Let's say you stretch out your hand for riches and you achieve it. Well, just remember, verse 7 says, for we brought nothing into the world and we cannot take anything out of the world. It's talking about money there and riches. So it's, the currency, our currency here has no currency in the next world. We're going to leave it all behind. The joke is about the dead guy. So how much did he leave? And the answer is, of course, he left everything. Like everybody leaves everything. All right, so I'm not saying don't work hard. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for mind. So the problem here, the ultimate problem that's being discussed is, what are you setting your mind to and setting your hand to do? Ultimately desiring the wrong thing. What I am saying is, don't surgically shipwreck yourself by a self-inflicted wound. You can wound yourself by this craving that should not be craved. So the teaching point is, let's, like we do in surgery, let's do everything to prevent this. Let's be aware of it. That's number one. Then let's make a pattern of decisions, use our mind, and then do patterns of behavior and do things that we strategize so that we never do end up like this, with maybe generosity and with giving. So let's be careful of the desires to be rich. Let's be careful of the craving that caused some to wander away from the faith, which, could be a spiritually fatal thing, and pierce themselves with many pangs. Let's avoid the self-inflicted wound of the love of money. Thanks for listening.